Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the deep dive, the place where we really get into the source material behind big ideas.
We try to cut through the noise, yeah. And today, we're going way back, like really way
How
back,
far back are we talking?
almost 2,300 years. We're meeting the man who kicked off arguably one of the most, well, enduring and practical philosophies ever, Zeno of Citium.
Zeno, the
Mhm.
original Stoic. But it's funny, isn't it? He often gets overshadowed by the later big names.
Totally. Seneca, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, they cast long shadows. And the popular idea of a Stoic is, let's be honest, often just wrong.
Right, this image of someone completely cold, unfeeling, like a statue, detached.
Yeah, and that's such a misunderstanding. Zeno wasn't about inventing emotional numbness. He was building a system, a really rigorous ethical framework for finding inner freedom.
So, our mission today.
Let's dive into Zeno's original school in Athens. What were the core ideas? How did his initial blueprint lead to this tough, demanding ethical system that survived centuries? We want to see the foundation.
Okay, let's start right at the beginning. Zeno's origin story. It's a kind of the perfect setup for his philosophy, isn't it? He wasn't some Athenian elite.
No, far from it. He was from Citium, that's in Cyprus, born around 334 BC. And the key thing, his dad was a merchant.
So Phoenician roots, basically. A culture built on trade, ships, the sea.
Exactly. A world constantly shaped by external forces you absolutely cannot control. Wind, waves, market prices. Your whole security is out there vulnerable.
It's almost like fate was setting him up for stoicism.
It really feels that way. So the traditional story, and you hear this a lot, is that he comes to Athens around 300 BC, maybe to sell cargo, part of the family business.
But things go wrong.
Spectacularly wrong, according
Yes.
to the Diogenes Laertius anyway. A massive shipwreck. He supposedly loses everything. His ship, his cargo, his entire external fortune, gone. Just like that. An arbitrary act of nature.
Wow, he literally washes up in Athens with nothing.
Pretty much. And this total loss, this stripping away of everything external, seems to have been the catalyst. He arrives penniless, maybe wanders into a bookshop, picks up Xenophon's memorabilia about Socrates,
And gets hooked.
gets completely hooked. He dives into philosophy, studying with everyone, the Cynics, the Platonists. He's soaking it all in. He wasn't looking for a job. He was looking for answers. How do you deal with being so vulnerable to fate?
And he didn't just join someone else's school, he synthesized.
Right. He took bits from different schools, especially a Cynic focus on virtue and living according to nature, but added his own systematic logic and physics that he started teaching himself.
And where he taught is crucial, isn't it? The Stoa Poikile.
The Painted Stoa, yeah.
Yeah.
A public colonnade right there in the Agora, the heart of Athens, near the marketplace.
So not some exclusive academy behind walls. It was out in the open, public, accessible.
Exactly. Which is why his followers just became known as the Stoics, the people
Right.
of the porch. It signals a philosophy meant for real life, for the messy public square, not just quiet contemplation.
Okay, but before we dig into his actual ideas, we have to tackle the big elephant in the room. We don't actually have Zeno's original writings.
Yeah, that's the frustrating part for historians. It's a huge loss. None of Zeno's books survived antiquity. Same for Cleanthes, his successor.
Why not? What happened?
Well, we don't know for sure. Maybe they just didn't get copied from the old papyrus scrolls onto the more durable parchment codices later on. Libraries burn, texts get lost. It happens.
So how do we know what Zeno taught? We're relying on later accounts.
Mostly, yeah. Second and third-hand sources, fragments quoted by other writers, and crucially the work of the third head of the school, Chrysippus.
Chrysippus.
Yeah.
He's the one who really systematized it all.
He's considered the second founder, in a way. He took Zeno's core concepts and gave them that incredibly detailed logical structure that allowed the philosophy to last.
So Zeno laid the blueprint, Chrysippus built the detailed architecture.
And then the Roman Seneca, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius lived in that structure, tested it under extreme conditions, and wrote about their experiences. Their writings are what survived most completely.
It's amazing it survived at all, given the loss of the founder's work. It speaks to the power of the initial ideas.
It really does. So let's look at that blueprint. One of the first things Zeno tackled was pretty fundamental. How do we even know anything for sure? Epistemology.
Right, not just ethics, but the basis of knowledge itself. He wanted certainty.
He wanted a solid grip on truth. That's the metaphor he apparently used. Like opening your hand to receive an impression,
Okay.
then slightly closing your fingers, which is like giving assent, like saying, okay, I think this is real,
Uh-huh.
and finally clenching your fist tight. That's katalepsis, the firm grasp, secure knowledge, unshakable.
A very physical metaphor for knowing, but it got complicated with how we actually perceive things, right? The fantasia, the impression.
Exactly. The fantasia is the impression something makes on your mind, on your soul. Zeno described its effect using the word tuposis,
Which means?
literally printing or stamping. Like reality leaves a distinct mark on your consciousness, an imprint that accurately reflects the object.
Okay, seems straightforward enough. Why was that controversial?
Because his successor, Cleanthes, seems to have taken that printing idea very, very literally, like pressing a signet ring into wax.
Ah, so the soul is like a block of wax.
That was the implication. And Chrysippus immediately saw the problem. If your soul is wax and reality keeps stamping new impressions on it, well, what happened?
It just becomes a mess. You can't hold multiple distinct impressions clearly. How do you distinguish truth from falsehood if the wax gets all blurred?
Exactly. The whole idea of a secure grip falls apart if the medium is constantly being overwritten and muddled. It makes reliable knowledge impossible.
So Chrysippus had to fix this.
He did. He argued Cleanthes' interpretation was, frankly, absurd. He said tuposis wasn't a physical stamping, but more like an alteration.
An alteration? How does that help?
Think about air and sound. When several people talk at once, the air is altered by all those sound waves simultaneously.
Right.
But you can still distinguish the different voices, can't you? The air isn't being stamped into oblivion. It's undergoing complex alterations that allow for multiple distinct perceptions.
Ah, I see. So the soul, or the pneuma, the Stoic concept of the vital breath or spirit, isn't like wax getting stamped. It's like air being altered, allowing multiple clear thoughts or perceptions at once.
Precisely. It saved the Stoic theory of knowledge. It allowed for that firm grip, that katalepsis, without making the soul a finite, easily corrupted blob of wax.
The level of detail they went into just to defend the possibility of reliable knowledge is kind of amazing.
Oh, they had to. If you can't trust your perceptions and judgments, the entire ethical system they were building has no foundation.
Which brings us neatly to that ethical system and probably Zeno's most famous or infamous contribution, the idea of indifference.
Ah, yes, the indifference.
Yeah.
This is core Stoic doctrine, and it definitely shakes things up.
The basic idea being only virtue is truly good, only vice is truly bad, everything else.
Everything else is adiaphora indifferent. Wealth, health, reputation, pleasure, even their opposites like poverty, sickness, pain, death, none of them have intrinsic moral value. They are neither good nor bad in themselves.
Okay, you can immediately see why people would push back against that. Like Heraclius, one of Zeno's own students who apparently left over this, saying health isn't good, or that being horribly sick isn't bad. It sounds wrong.
It sounds completely counterintuitive to our everyday experience, absolutely. And Zeno recognized that. He had to refine the idea by making a crucial distinction within the category of indifference. This is fundamental. He said, okay, while these things aren't morally good or bad, some are naturally preferred. Proegumena.
Preferred? Like what?
Like health, strength, wealth, good reputation, things that are generally advantageous for living a natural life.
And the opposites.
Those are dispreferred. Proegumena. Sickness, poverty, weakness, pain. Things naturally disadvantageous.
He even admitted that these preferred things align with what people normally call good, didn't he?
He did. He acknowledged the connection to ordinary language. So the obvious question is, why bother with the indifferent category at all? Why not just call health good and sickness bad?
Yeah, what's the point of the complicated category?
This is the genius of it, really. It's a safeguard for your inner peace. The whole point is that your eudaimonia, your flourishing or happiness, cannot depend on securing these preferred things or avoiding the dispreferred ones.
Because you don't ultimately control them.
Exactly. They are external, largely subject to fate. If you label health as truly good, then when you get sick, your good has been taken away and you're inevitably going to suffer mentally.
But if health is merely preferred,
Then getting sick is losing something advantageous, yes, but not something essential to your moral worth or your potential for happiness. The only thing that determines your moral worth is virtue.
and virtue lies in how you use these indifferents.
Precisely. The key is the knowledge of how these indifferents should be used. That's where virtue resides. You can have wealth, preferred, and use it viciously. Or you can face poverty, dispreferred, with courage and integrity.
So the external condition doesn't define your goodness. Your internal response, your virtuous use of whatever life throws at you, does.
That's the core insight. It relocates the source of happiness entirely within your own mind, within your faculty of judgment and choice. It makes happiness immune to external fortune.
That makes sense. It's a radical shift in perspective, insulating you from the chaos outside.
And that insulation is aimed at achieving the ultimate goal of the philosophy, eudaimonia.
Which gets translated in different ways, right? Happiness, flourishing, living well.
Living in agreement with nature is a common Stoic phrasing, living rationally and virtuously. And the Stoics were pretty blunt. They argue that not having a coherent philosophy of life is the biggest mistake you can make.
Why? What happens if you don't?
You just default to your basic programming. Our evolutionary drives push us to seek pleasure, avoid pain, chase status, acquire stuff.
The hedonic treadmill.
Exactly. You end up constantly anxious, distracted, chasing external goals that never really deliver lasting satisfaction. You're basically a slave to your impulses and external circumstances.
Whereas the Stoic life, based on Zeno's principles, offers something different.
Something better, they argued. It might involve less immediate comfort, maybe fewer fleeting pleasures, sure. But the goal isn't comfort.
Yeah.
It's atraxia, inner tranquility, freedom from disturbance. And that, they believe, contains considerably more genuine joy and satisfaction than chasing pleasure ever could. It's about achieving an unshakable inner harmony through reason and right judgment.
Okay, so if that's the goal, how do you achieve it day to day? This leads us to probably the most practical tool in the Stoic kit, right? The one Epictetus really hammered home.
Absolutely, the dichotomy of control. Epictetus, who'd actually been a slave himself, needed this distinction perhaps more than anyone. He needed a way to be free even when his body wasn't.
He drew a very sharp line.
A razor-sharp line between what is in our power and what is not in our power. Getting this right is like Stoicism 101.
Okay, break it down. What is truly in our power? What's ours?
According to Epictetus, it's our inner world. Our opinions and judgments, katalepsis, our impulses to act, our desires, our aversions, horme. Basically, the activity of our own minds, our choices, our will. These things are naturally free, unimpeded, entirely up to us.
And what's not in our power?
Everything else, the externals. Our bodies, health, sickness, ultimately death. Our property, our reputation, political office, or power. Epictetus calls these things weak, slavish, subject to restraint, and fundamentally belonging to others or to fate.
And the danger is confusing the two categories.
That's the root of all misery, according to Epictetus. If you mistake something external and uncontrollable, like reputation, for something that defines your worth or freedom, you're setting yourself up for constant frustration, lament, anger, blaming gods and people. You'll be perpetually disturbed.
Because you're trying to control the uncontrollable.
Exactly. The goal is to place your sense of self and your happiness entirely within the sphere of your own choices and judgments, the only sphere where you have true agency. That's the path to inner freedom, tranquility, and consistency, regardless of what happens outside.
So the daily work becomes policing that boundary, constantly checking our reactions.
It's the exercise of value judgment, making correct use of impressions. An impression hits you, a thought, an event, someone's comment. Maybe, if I don't get that promotion, I'm a failure.
That's the raw impression.
Yes, the crucial step is not to immediately assent, not to just accept it as true. You have to pause, examine it rationally, using Zeno's framework.
Ask, is this thing truly bad or just dispreferred? Is my worth actually dependent on this external thing?
Precisely. You interrogate the impression. Is the promotion truly essential for my moral worth, or is it just a preferred indifferent? If you blindly accept the faulty premise, external success equals inner worth, you've surrendered your freedom. The practice is to withhold automatic assent and judge rationally, only agreeing with what aligns with virtue and reality.
This also gives you a different way to think about loss, doesn't it? Like a kind of mental accounting.
Yeah, Epictetus talks about this. When you lose something external, say money, or your reputation takes a hit, you need to immediately ask, okay, what did I get in return for this?
What could you possibly gain from losing money?
Well, did you maintain your integrity during the loss? Did you practice resilience? Did you gain tranquility by accepting what you couldn't control? Did you perform a virtuous action that maybe cost you the money or reputation?
So you're looking at the exchange rate in terms of virtue.
Exactly. If you traded a fragile external thing, money, status, for an internal inviolable good like self-control, courage, peace of mind, then from the Stoic perspective, you haven't actually suffered a net loss. You've made a good trade.
That requires some serious mental gymnastics, though, especially in the moment of loss.
Oh, absolutely. It requires constant practice and vigilance. Epictetus warns that even small slips in reason can undo a lot of progress. You have to be constantly on guard because life will challenge you.
Which leads us perfectly into the practical Stoic toolkit, the exercises they developed based on Zeno's foundation, specifically designed to build that resilience.
Right, they knew abstract principles weren't enough. You need training. The most famous is probably the premeditation of evils, or premeditatio malorum.
Preparing for adversity before it happens.
Exactly. Thinking through potential hardships, illness, loss of loved ones, exile, poverty, not to be morbid, but to strip them of their shock value. If you've already contemplated something difficult, when it happens, it feels less catastrophic, more like something you were prepared for.
And Seneca took this beyond just thinking, didn't he? He recommended actual practice.
He did, especially for more advanced practitioners.
Yeah.
Voluntary discomfort. Deliberately living as if poor for a few days, eating basic food, wearing simple clothes, maybe sleeping on the floor.
Why? What's the point of making yourself uncomfortable?
To train the mind and body. To prove to yourself you can endure hardship. To appreciate what you normally have. If you've practiced being cold and hungry voluntarily, then when actual misfortune strikes, your mind isn't soft, as Seneca put it. It doesn't panic. It recognizes the feeling.
Toughening yourself up, basically.
Mentally toughening, yes. Building resilience and perspective. And the ultimate premeditation, the one they practiced constantly.
Confronting mortality.
Yes, thinking about death daily. Seneca's advice. Settle our accounts with life every day. Live today as if it might be your last. Not in a reckless way, but in a way that focuses your attention.
On what truly matters.
Exactly. If this might be your last day, are you going to waste it on trivial arguments, petty anxieties, chasing meaningless stuff? Or are you going to act virtuously, connect with loved ones, do what's important?
It's that idea of waking up each morning and seeing the new day as a bonus, a profit.
Right. I have lived, the Stoic can say at the end of each day. If tomorrow comes, great, it's extra. If not, the account is settled. Awareness of death gives life value and urgency.
Okay, so they're preparing internally, building resilience. But this brings up a common criticism. If all that matters is internal virtue, why engage with the messy external world at all? Why not just retreat? The passive Stoic stereotype.
Yeah, that stereotype is completely wrong based on the text. The Stoic sage, the ideal, is relentlessly active. They aren't passively accepting fate. They are actively applying practical wisdom phronesis to everything they do.
Whether personal life, politics, social issues.
Yes, they engage fully. Retreating from the world goes against Zeno's understanding of human nature. We are rational beings, yes, but we are also fundamentally social beings.
Which connects to the idea of our duties, our roles. Kathekon.
Exactly. Kathekon means appropriate action or duty. Epictetus really emphasizes this. We all inhabit multiple roles: parent, child, citizen, friend, worker, neighbor.
And a good life means fulfilling the duties of those roles virtuously.
Yes. Living according to nature means embracing our social nature and living up to the responsibilities that come with these roles. To neglect your duties, Epictetus says, is to undermine your own humanity.
There's also that fascinating practice from Hierocles about expanding our concern, right? The circles.
Oh yeah, Hierocles' circles is a great visualization for Stoic cosmopolitanism, the idea that we're all citizens of the world. Imagine concentric circles around yourself.
Innermost is you, then family, then extended family.
Then neighbors, fellow citizens, countrymen, and finally the outermost circle is all of humanity. Naturally, our concern is strongest for the inner circles.
But the exercise is to actively pull the outer circles inward.
Exactly. Hierocles suggested deliberately trying to treat people in the next circle out as if they belong one circle closer. So, call your cousin's brother or sister. Treat fellow citizens like family. Strive to care for strangers as if they were countrymen.
It's a conscious effort to fight against natural tribalism and expand empathy.
Precisely. A deliberate behavioral practice to make universal concern more concrete. It's about actively working to care more about people further away from you.
So the Stoic is definitely engaged, active, social. But what about strong emotions like anger, jealousy, fear? This is where the unfeeling image comes from. How did Zeno and the others approach these?
They saw strong, irrational emotions, the pathy or passions, as incredibly destructive. Seneca calls anger a temporary madness. He compares being overcome by passion to being thrown off a building completely out of control, irrational, damaging.
So they aimed to eliminate these passions entirely.
That was the ideal for the sage, yes. But they made a really important distinction that often gets lost, explaining why they weren't just unfeeling robots.
What's the distinction?
Between the passions pathy and what they call first movements, Propotheo.
Push movements.
These are the initial involuntary physiological reactions. You hear a loud noise, you jump, someone insults you, you might flush, your heart rate might go up, you feel a flicker of fear or anger.
That's natural, unavoidable.
Completely natural, yes. It happens too fast for reason to intervene. These first movements are not judged morally. They aren't the emotions the Stoics condemn.
So when does a first movement become a destructive passion?
It becomes a passion only when the mind steps in, makes a faulty judgment about the situation. This insult is a terrible harm, and then assents to that judgment, agrees with it, and decides to act on it.
Like deciding this insult requires retaliation.
Exactly. Fear becomes a passion when you judge something as truly dreadful and assent to the impulse to flee. Anger becomes a passion when you judge you've been wronged and assent to the impulse to attack. The Stoic works to interrupt the process before giving assent to that faulty judgment.
So control lies in withholding that assent, in examining the judgment rationally before acting.
That's the key. You acknowledge the first movement, the physiological flutter, but you don't endorse the irrational judgment that usually follows. You pause, assess, and choose a rational response.
Okay, so if someone does insult you, what's the rational response? Not anger, presumably.
Ideally, humor or disdain. Seneca thought laughter was often the best response to life's absurdities, the things that might otherwise make us weep. Laughter shows perspective. It implies, this thing isn't actually important enough to disturb my peace.
But Seneca, being a practical guy involved in Roman politics, knew it wasn't always that simple, right?
He added a pragmatic caveat. While disdain is usually best, sometimes you encounter someone who's just dense, a slow-witted insulter, as he put it.
And if you just ignore them or joke, they take it as weakness.
Yeah, they might just keep going, an endless stream of insults. In that specific case, Seneca suggested a brief, firm, non-emotional response might be needed just to shut it down, to protect your tranquility from constant assault. It's tactical, not angry.
It shows how grounded their ethics were in real-world interactions. And that engagement often came at a very high price, didn't it? This wasn't just armchair philosophy.
Not at all. The history of Stoicism in Rome is filled with examples of practitioners confronting power, often with fatal consequences. Zeno's philosophy wasn't passive, it demanded courage. Look at Seneca himself.
Tutor to Nero, incredibly wealthy and powerful, but it didn't end well.
No. As Nero became more tyrannical, Seneca's position became untenable. He tried to retire, but Nero eventually saw him as a threat or a reproach.
And forced him to commit suicide.
Yes, and the accounts are dramatic. His wife, Paulina, resolved to die with him, cutting her wrists too. Nero's guards actually intervened to save her. Perhaps Nero didn't want the bad PR, but Seneca met his end, embodying the principles he wrote about.
Then there's Musonius Rufus, Epictetus' teacher. He clashed with emperors too.
Multiple times. He was exiled by Nero, then later by Vespasian, sent off to Gyara, this barren, awful island in the Aegean, a place meant to break people.
But he kept teaching, maintained his stoic calm.
Apparently so. He showed that external circumstances, even brutal exile, couldn't touch his inner state, his virtue.
And his student, Epictetus, faced similar hardship. Started as a slave.
Whose master was actually one of Nero's officers involved in Nero's own death. Epictetus eventually gained freedom, started teaching, but then Emperor Domitian got paranoid and banished all philosophers from Rome around AD 89. So Epictetus was exiled too.
It's incredible. Loss of freedom, loss of home, yet the philosophy provided the anchor.
That was the whole point. And think about someone like Helvidius Priscus. He really exemplifies that relentlessly active Stoic agent Zeno envisioned.
He was a senator.
A senator who constantly, publicly stood up to Emperor Vespasian, defending the Senate's traditional powers and rights. He refused to be silenced.
And paid the ultimate price for it.
He was executed for his defiance. His stoicism wasn't about quiet endurance. It was about courageously performing his civic duty, his kathekon, no matter the risk.
These stories really highlight the stakes, and they bring us back to Zeno himself and the potentially uncomfortable endpoint of Stoic resilience, the open door.
Right. The historical accounts suggest Zeno, like Cleanthes, and later Romans like Cato the Younger and Seneca, likely ended his own life. Suicide was an accepted, though not encouraged, part of Stoic doctrine.
Epictetus called it the open door.
Yes.
Wow.
The idea was that if circumstances become so extreme that living virtuously, living according to nature, becomes literally impossible, say, under unbearable tyranny or debilitating illness with no hope, then reason allows for a voluntary exit. It's the ultimate assertion of control, choosing departure over a life stripped of all dignity and virtue.
So wrapping this all together, Zeno's journey from shipwrecked merchant to philosophical founder It laid down a powerful blueprint.
A blueprint for internal freedom, absolutely. He took the chaos of the external world, the reality of suffering and loss, and created a system focused entirely on what we can control: our judgments, our intentions, our character.
Codified by Chrysippus, tested to the extreme by the Romans.
It became this comprehensive framework, demanding constant self-awareness, preparation for hardship, especially death, and active, virtuous engagement with our social roles and duties, often, as we saw, at immense personal cost.
And remarkably, this ancient blueprint, nearly 2,300 years old, still resonates today, doesn't it? Particularly in psychology.
The echoes are incredibly strong, especially in cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. Aaron Beck and Albert Ellis, the founders of CBT, explicitly acknowledged their debt to Stoicism.
How so? What's the connection?
Think about core CBT techniques. Cognitive distancing, learning to see your thoughts as just thoughts, not necessarily reality. That's pure Stoicism. It's exactly what Epictetus meant by examining your impressions, Fantasia, before assenting to them.
Separating the external event from your internal judgment about it.
Precisely. When Epictetus famously said men are disturbed not by things but by the views which they take of them, he basically laid the groundwork for modern cognitive therapy. It's about changing your relationship with your thoughts to change your emotional response.
It's fascinating how Zeno's insights, filtered through centuries, still form the basis of effective therapies.
It really shows the enduring power of focusing on that internal locus of control.
Now, we've talked a lot about senators, emperors, male philosophers, but Zeno's system, aiming for virtue based on universal human reason, should apply equally to everyone, shouldn't it?
Absolutely. And that brings us to a really powerful final thought, again from Musonius Rufus, the exiled teacher.
What did he say?
He was asked directly, should women study philosophy too? And his answer was radical for the time, and maybe even still sounds radical to some today.
Which was?
An emphatic yes. He argued women possess exactly the same capacity for reason as men, and therefore the same natural inclination toward virtue. They need philosophy just as much to live well.
No difference in the curriculum.
None whatsoever. He basically said, why would philosophical training depend on gender when the goal living a noble, virtuous life, achieving eudaimonia, is universal to all rational beings? Philosophical potential, he argued, is purely about character and effort, not your social role or your biology.
That's a potent challenge to leave our listeners with. The original Stoic vision wasn't about becoming a detached man of stone.
Not at all. It was about actively engaging with the world, whoever you are, securing your inner freedom through reason, and striving constantly for the best, most virtuous action, regardless of the consequences. That's the real legacy Zeno left us.